Welcome, everybody. My name's Jon Clay, VP of Threat Intelligence at Trend Micro, and joining me again is Ed Cabrera, Chief Cybersecurity Officer for Trend Micro. And this is episode 15 of our Trend Talks BizSec. Ed, how are you today?
Doing fantastic. As I always say, apparently this is going to be a great topic. Definitely something near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about ChatGPT and all the things about it. It's been taking the world by storm a little bit. So lots of different articles. Obviously, Microsoft has invested heavily, I think 10 billion into the OpenAI organization. But Ed, let's first start out. Let's just talk about what is ChatGPT?
Well, it's a large language model, right? But I think what's unique about ChatGPT, it combines supervised learning with reinforcement learning. And reinforcement learning is actually where that superpower really starts to develop. And I say superpower in quotes, obviously, but it's the way it is able to really formulate really good answers to questions it is provided to. In other words, it's not just responding to a simple question, it is then formulating an answer in a very comprehensive way, albeit sometimes not completely accurate, but definitely a fantastic conversation. And very quickly, it's able to give a response on just about any topic.
Yeah, I think it had one of the fastest growth models that we've ever seen for a new program or a new app that's available out there. There millions of people are using it, and basically you can have a conversation with an AI, right? And learn information about it. Like you said, what I find fascinating is it takes your question, and then what it seems to be doing is figuring out word for word what the best answer is, right?
Yep. No. I mean, it's really dissecting your question, understanding, like you said, each word within your question and developing that answer for you. And so what you get is a very, very understandable and coherent response, right? It actually then analyzes it with the data that it has access to up to the, I guess, the mid part of 2021. It is able then to quickly give you the answer or a answer that you may be looking for.
Yeah, and it's been obviously I've been fascinated listening and following a lot of the people who are going into and diving in. Even our researchers have published a number of blogs on this ChatGPT that you can find on our Trend Micro Research page. But one of the things that I'm seeing that's quite interesting is there's a number of school districts that are banning ChatGPT because students were taking advantage of it, from what I understand, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this with each technology advancement that we, experience, it really has sort of an impact on the classroom, right? I mean, I think I just think back growing up, anytime I provided or asked a question to my parents would always point me to the bookshelf where we had our World Book Encyclopedia, and then I had to search and find my answer, or scratch that knowledge itch, so to speak. And then we had Google, right? And Google comes in with Google search capabilities, and now it is part of everybody's and all parents, vocabulary is Google it, right? And so I think this is that next generation. This is the challenge absolutely for educators, is to discern if the students, because of its incredible capability to create a very comprehensive response that really insinuates that inductive and inductive reasoning,
Right.
that it truly the student, or is this the ChatGPT? So definitely I can see the challenges in the short term from an education perspective, but I don't know if banning it is going to be the way to go, because I think the way it is sort of permeating our psyche is the fact that it is enabling all kinds of work roles, industries, and possibly could eventually replace a lot of these roles and positions, copywriters, editors, and this and the like. But But also, I think from an education perspective, like me and you talked about earlier, I think you essentially have, a tutor on demand, because it's not like you are having to search for the topic and then read read writings about a certain topic. It's actually answering a specific question that you're answering it. And like everything else, it can possibly give you an answer and then might generate two or three other questions in your mind, and then you can continue that conversation. So I think from an education perspective, I think it's going to be phenomenal. Curriculum development, curriculum delivery, you have grading of test exams and quizzes. I just really think that we really are only scratching the surface of the capability. So I don't know necessarily banning it is probably the right way. I guess it's the short-term Band-Aid for educators.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be a challenge for them. But what I find just tremendous, Ed, is like you just mentioned, when we were young, obviously we're dating ourselves here, but we had one source to find information, which was the encyclopedia. This ChatGPT scrubs the entire freaking internet of all the data that is available on the internet to find an answer. And that's what I find fascinating, because, and it does it in blink of an eye. You all of a sudden, you type in a question and it immediately is giving you an answer, and it's doing that. And that's the power of computation. That's the power of technology that we have today. Obviously, there's going to be some challenges like we're seeing today. Bing had announced their big thing, and we started to see a lot of people, being actually able to take the chat into some dark areas and stuff. So certainly it's a language model that isn't perfect, and it can be abused. Let's shift a little bit about, obviously we're in cybersecurity. Let's talk about cybersecurity, and there's been a number of things talked about in this space, from being able to create code, be able to create malware. What's thoughts on the malware side of it?
Well, let me first, think or talk about sort of an analogy, right? When you think of ChatGPT, I think of ChatGPT and these large language models that are coming out, which more will be coming. I really see them as that child prodigy, right? The child that is an incredibly smart individual, very high IQ, that is able to make it into an Ivy League school at age 13 or 14. But the one thing that's missing is the child experiences, from a common sense perspective and or real world experience situations. So when we talk about cybersecurity aspects and the sort of risk associated with ChatGPT for cybersecurity, one is developing phishing emails, social engineering attacks. Well, interestingly enough, it could probably be very capable in doing so, but at the same time, it is very susceptible and vulnerable to social engineering attacks against it. In other words, it's very naive and I say it's naive, to really ascertain tone and tenor, so to speak, of text messages. It's hard enough for us humans to understand that. So how does it differentiate a penetration tester doing research, a white hat hacker doing research, and can it discern, and I'd say it can't discern, a malicious actor trying to do something to develop either malware or automate or advanced, like we saw in our Pwn to Own competition last week, where it helped automate a part of the model in the back end to develop an exploit, right? And so these are the things that, unfortunately, it's going to be the fact of life going forward for us.
Yeah, it definitely is going to be a challenge. I think if you look at some of the areas where the malicious actors are probably getting a benefit out of it. First and foremost, the learning, like you said, I think it's going to take the learning of people. So somebody who wants to get into cyber, the malicious side of cyber is going to be able to learn better, faster, quicker, to be able to launch malicious attacks. The other area I think right now is, as you mentioned, the phishing. So having it create socially engineered attacks very quickly. It can obviously, these malicious actors take advantage of the news of the day, the latest topics, the latest items, incidences that are happening in the world, and it can very quickly craft something about that topic because it's going to pull the data from that's all over the internet, all the news and stuff, and it be able to create a very compelling email or text message for that malicious actor to use against a victim. And that's where I think you're going to see the malware side. It can create malware, but again, I don't think it's sophisticated. I don't think it's malware that's going to be undetected because again, we're already looking at the ways that model works. And so if, we're going to use AI against AI, like you mentioned earlier, Ed. So I think there's some things that are going to happen, but certainly moving forward, we're going to have to keep our eyes on it. We're going to have to continue to invest in ways to detect the malicious side of it. But certainly it's a boon to, I think, to the good people of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. This is right now, as it stands, large language models such as ChatGPT are tools in not only in network defenders but attackers toolboxes, right? So it's one of the things. I think one thing we can say, it's going to be able to help automate and create efficiencies and productivities on both sides. So unfortunately, the productivity value that we would receive from a network defender perspective is the same productivity value that network attackers and malicious actors are going to have at the same time.
Yeah. One of the interesting aspects that we've heard is that it only has taken data up through 2021 or mid 2021, I think. So it doesn't even have data yet coming out of the last year and a half, which obviously is a limitation for itself.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, hey, how am I going to use this even for my normal day-to-day work, from developing copyright for my company, developing marketing material, just traditional research, there is that endpoint 2021. So any kind of dynamic data or more recent events or it's not going to have that history to I mean, it doesn't have that data to draw on. And so it definitely has its limitations. But we have ChatGPT 4 coming out, which now incredible. I don't know by what factor. I think I've heard by 10x more powerful and so forth. But I mean, it's all the power is in its data. And going back to what we have to deal with too is we also always have to remember that within all machine learning and even deep neural networks, I mean, there's a level of bias that you have to be able to be aware of, right? And so even when you're doing research or whatever, that these models can be manipulated and the bias can be infused even in very subtle ways. I mean, we've seen examples of very non-subtle ways of these chat bots saying some like you mentioned earlier, some controversial statements and some negative and malicious and going down these dark tunnels. But we just have to be very mindful of the power of it.
Yeah, well, I think what people really need to understand that if their data is not on their hard drive, it's going to be used by a chat GPT or a chat bot. It's going to hoover that stuff up. Any data you have online, it's going to know about you. And so that's where I think a lot of people have to understand, what am I sharing online about myself? Because it will definitely get that information about you and use it at some point. Now, again, it could be used for good, could be used for bad. It's like any tool any new technology we have, Ed, right? Yep. We always see the good things come out with it, but also the bad things come out, and the people abuse it. So nothing different from any tool that's been used in history of man, basically.
Absolutely.
Well, listen, let's wrap this up. Ed, any last thoughts on ChatGPT and where we're going in the world?
No, I think it's an incredible technology. I think definitely, if you haven't already, utilize it, play with it, test it. I think it's going to, because if you don't, and if you don't find ways that you could possibly incorporate large language models into to improve your productivity, I think it's one of those things you have to educate yourself. And what a better question to ask or find out the answer than ask GPT about ChatGPT.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A couple points I'd just like to make. Obviously, it's in its infancy, but it's here to stay. No question about that.
Yep.
They're excellent for learning and support for tool for everybody, including criminals, right?
Yep.
There's still a
Exactly.
language model. They can simulate a language, but simulations have glitches, and those glitches can be abused. And like I mentioned earlier, if your data is online, it's going to be utilized. So you're going to have to take some caution around that. But thanks everybody for joining us again in this Trend Talks BizSec episode 15. We'll be back again and with another topic soon. Ed, thanks for the conversation. Always fun to have this.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Everybody have a great day. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.